So, I finally got around to The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, which is unusual because I normally see these films on the first day, but, on the first weekend at least. But this year, for some reason, I got busy, there was other stuff I wanted to see, I wasn't running to this one. Not because I didn't want to see it, but just because I got busy. And so this has become, so The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, becomes the first film that I see in 2015. And I didn't hate it. The critics just have walked all over it, but I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't absolutely hate it either. It's entertaining. It's good. I enjoyed it. A little bit of history. I was never a Tolkien fan. Never really cared for the series. This is when I was a kid, I didn't read Tolkien except I did read The Hobbit, but I didn't read Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, any of that. My heroes when I was a kid had Jedi robes. So Tolkien was never within my grasp. I tried, but to be honest, I got a little bored. So I never really got with Tolkien until the Lord of the Rings series by Peter Jackson, which I enjoyed. They didn't change my life, but I enjoyed them. They were well made, but I haven't, they're not really part of my life. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I don't have a problem with this being a trilogy. I know that's been a defining point for a lot of people, but for me, I don't care. I really don't care. If he tells a good story and it's still entertaining, then great. But it does feel a little protracted. I'll admit that. I think the successful parts of this trilogy are the first and the last part. I didn't care much for the second one. I didn't hate it, but I didn't care much for it. I think a lot of the protracting in the second one bears more of the weight of that. And I think that one had less of a... I was just less interested in the last one as I was in this one. So what's good about it? I like the narrative. The narrative here is much cleaner. The story is easier to follow, whereas I felt the second one, the narrative in it was messy and too full of characters. This one, I found myself a little more interested in what was going on. Besides that, I liked a lot of the themes in it. As I say, I like the first and the last films a lot better than the middle part, because I think the second one, I think the similarity between the first one and this one is that excuse me, there is a feeling that there's a narrative theme through these two films. The first one, which is, and I'm kind of alone in this opinion, the first one is my favorite of these three. A lot of people thought it was boring, a lot of people thought it was kind of lifeless. I didn't. I loved it. I thought it was just a straightforward journey. I thought it was well made. I enjoyed it. But I also felt that it was slowed down enough that I got to know Bilbo enough to care about what happens to him. And I felt like there was a nice theme of personal responsibility. Bilbo wants no part of this. The dwarves come and ask him to help them out, be a burglar for them, but Bilbo wants no part of it. He'd rather sit at home with his dishes and his doilies and his pipe and his fire, and he doesn't want to get involved. He really doesn't want to get involved, and I think that's a very modern theme. Just happier sitting at home than being out in the world helping somebody out. That's a very valid theme. And it carries over into the Battle of the Five Armies on a larger scale. Nobody wants to help each other out. There's some things happening. The orc armies are coming down to wipe everybody out. And they want no part of it. They'd rather just stick to their own, not deal with each other, not work together, and that's that theme that runs through this. And I felt that there's a great theme of greed and wanting to stick with your own, racism, I guess you'd call it, in the third one that I really liked. This is what, now I'm not that familiar with this story. I read the book only recently, which the tone of the book and the movies are very, very different. The tone of the book is very sort of bouncy. It's very lighthearted, where the movie is a little more, or the movie series is a little more sour. And that's okay, because that's in the translation, but the focus is shifted. Bilbo, the book takes place exclusively through almost exclusively through Bilbo's eyes. This one, you've got an economy of characters that you have to deal with, and that's okay. I think at some points Bilbo does get a little lost in this story, but I think eventually it does come back to him. The great thing about this, the thing that I didn't expect, are the performances. I think that there are two. And the first is Martin Freeman as Bilbo, who's just so charming. I mean, he is really, really charming. I don't see an actor there. I see the character. And that's hard to pull off in a movie like this. He feels, I feel as if he's living this character, not just playing, not just occupying the outfit. And the best performance in the movie is, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, Richard Armitage as Thorin Oakenshield, who his character all through this series has had this sort of mournful tone. He's lost everything. He lost his father, his kingdom, his heritage, everything. And he wants to get back and reclaim it. And he does. And here we have, he gets it, but the greed poisons his mind. He's in the Lonely Mountain, he's in the Dwarf Kingdom with all this gold that everybody wants, and he could help everybody else, but he becomes selfish and greedy, and almost cruel. And he is, along with Bilbo, I think, the only two characters in this movie that are three-dimensional, that have an arc to them, that I feel that I really cared about. The other characters, to be honest with you, the other characters are kind of superfluous. But I didn't feel that the movie was overpopulated. That was a problem I had with The Desolation of Smaug, is that I felt like it was just too stuffed with uninteresting characters. There was just too much. Too much going on, too many uninteresting people, and to be honest, I just didn't care. So, what don't I like about it? Well, let's start with the CG. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, one of the great things about the Lord of the Rings trilogy was that it had a sense of, you felt like different kinds of visual effects, different kinds of ideas were employed so that you didn't feel like you were watching a video game. That's a problem here. It relies so much on CGI, on CG graphic, on computer generated images, I should say, that I felt it was a distraction. I felt it took me out of the movie. In particular is this villain Azog, who we've been following since the Defiler, who we've been following since the first one, and he looks like a video game villain, and I just didn't. It didn't. I just felt like it took me out of the movie. And when he finally has his confrontation with Thorin, it did. It felt like a video game. And take a look at the original design of Azog. And look at him in the movie. The original design had such a more menacing feel to it. You would have felt that Thorin was in danger. In the computer-generated image, the CGI version, he's too clean, too unreal. He doesn't feel flesh and blood, and it just, that bothered me, because he is such an important character. Much less important is another character who, this was a heartbreaker for me, because this character is played by one of my favorite actors. The character who comes in, he's a dwarf named Dane, and he comes in, he's an elf, and he's leading a dwarf army, and he's played by Billy Connolly. And Billy Connolly has that one of those voices, it's like Jennifer Tilly or Christopher Walken, that you could pick out of Yankee Stadium. And he's so funny, and his personality is so big, and he's such a distinctive voice that I was distracted by the fact that they've used this computer-generated imagery, and it's very, very clumsy when he comes on screen. It just, I could see the effect, and it took me out of the moment. Not only that, but Billy Connolly, who can liven any material, is in this movie for less than 3 minutes. And this is a 2.5-hour movie. This is a long movie, and he's barely in it. So much so that you're just like, what was the point? And I don't know. That just bothered me. I'm sort of weighing back and forth, because for everything that I liked about this movie, there's something else that I don't like. And as days go on, as I start thinking about it, the balance starts to shift, and there are things that I don't like about it. I gave it a favorable review on my website, armchaircinema.com, by the way. It's not a bad movie, but it's okay. I'm just not in love with it. I gotta recharge the batteries, so I'll be back, and we'll have some closing remarks, and we'll talk about the trailers.